Today's episode is sponsored by NOLA Mattress.
You absolutely have to have dark in order to have light. Gotta have dark. Gotta have opposites, dark and light and dark, continually in painting. If you have light on light, you have nothing. If you have dark on dark, you basically have nothing. There we are. It's like in life. You gotta have a little sadness once in a while so you know when the good times come. I'm waiting on the good times now.
Before he became the gentle voice of calm, before the happy little trees and the quiet brush strokes, Bob Ross wore a uniform. He barked orders. He made grown men scrub toilets. And one day, he swore he'd never raise his voice again. Millions knew the painter. Few knew the man. And almost no one knew what happened to everything he'd built once he was gone. So what happened to Bob Ross after the easel was packed away? Why was his son erased from history? And how did people closest to him walk away with everything? This is the side of Bob Ross they don't put on mugs and t-shirts.
Hello, I'm Mike Droberg, Marine Corps veteran and filmmaker, and we will try to answer these questions on today's episode of Forgotten History.
Born in Daytona, Florida in 1942, Robert Norman Ross didn't take the conventional route. He dropped out of high school in 9th grade to help support his family, then enlisted in the United States Air Force at just 18 years old. Ross spent over 2 decades in uniform. He started as a medical records technician and rose to the rank of Master Sergeant, stationed for much of his career at Elson Air Force Base in Alaska. He supervised troops, gave orders, and enforced discipline. By his own admission, he was the guy who would make you scrub the latrine. But Alaska also gave him something else: solitude, wilderness, and inspiration. In the frozen quiet, Ross found painting. He became captivated by the snow-covered peaks and endless trees, and he taught himself to recreate them on canvas. Eventually, he discovered Bill Alexander, a German TV painter who used a fast, no-nonsense technique called wet on wet. Ross trained under him and became a certified instructor. Behind the scenes, Ross was a husband and father. He married Linda Brown, his second wife, in 1995. But long before that, he had a son, Steve, from his first marriage. Steve followed in his father's footsteps, learning to paint, even appearing on later episodes of The Joy of Painting. But life wasn't always peaceful. Ross's first marriage ended in divorce, and his second marriage ended in tragedy. And as Bob's star began to rise, his personal life was often kept in the shadows. When Bob finally retired from the Air Force, he didn't settle down. He went all in on painting. With limited money, he lived on the road, teaching workshops, selling art supplies, and doing painting demos for anyone who would listen. And that perm? It wasn't fashion. It was a way to save money on haircuts. He hated it, but it stuck. And it was during one of these workshops that his life changed forever. While getting ticked off about Bob Ross's situation, you're probably thinking it's time to upgrade your sleep situation. So head over to nolamattress.com/history and enter the code HISTORY to get $50 off your mattress. I've been sleeping on the NOLA Evolution for a little over 4 months now, and honestly, it's made a huge difference. I alternate between sleeping on my back and side, and this mattress nails a perfect balance of firmness. I'm falling asleep faster, staying asleep longer, and waking up without the usual aches in my shoulders and back. One of the standout features? It sleeps way cooler than my old mattress, which has been a game changer for me. Delivery was quick and painless too. It arrived in a box at my door, and setup only took a few minutes. It's fiberglass free, CertiPure US certified, and made right to order here in the US at Nola's Arizona factory. No strange smells or mystery materials, just clean, quality comfort. You'll also get 120 nights to try it risk-free. Plus it comes in a limited lifetime warranty, and financing is available if you need it. I seriously love this mattress, and I think you will too. So visit nolamattress.com/history and use the promo code HISTORY for $50 off. Don't wait too long. Offers like this don't last forever. Enter Walt and Annette Kowalski, art supply distributors who saw Ross teach and had a revelation. This wasn't just a painter, he was a brand. They helped him form a company, Bob Ross Inc., and filmed the pilot episode. PBS gave it a shot. The Joy of Painting premiered in 1983. No ads, no fancy graphics, just 30 minutes of serenity. But what Ross didn't know was that the Kowalskis weren't just helping him build an empire. They were positioning themselves to own it. With the Joy of Painting gaining momentum, Bob Ross became more than a man. He became a movement. PBS never paid him to host the show, but it didn't matter. The real money came from the name. Bob Ross paint sets, Bob Ross brushes, Bob Ross instructional videos. A booming art empire, quietly run by Bob Ross Inc. The original company was founded in 1985 by 4 people: Bob Ross himself, his wife Jane, and business partners Walt and Annette Kowalski. At first, it seemed like a fair partnership. The Kowalskis handled the business, Bob handled the art. They filmed, marketed, and licensed his name across the country. But Bob wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't reading the fine print. And as his face appeared on more and more products, the paperwork increasingly favored the Kowalskis. Every time Bob signed something, agreeing to new license terms, product expansions, or intellectual property agreements, he was giving up a little more control. And behind the smile, exhaustion was setting in. He filmed over 400 episodes. He taught millions how to paint, but he never trademarked his own image, never retained legal control of his name. That power now belonged to Bob Ross Inc., and the Kowalskis owned a majority of it. And then there was the other side of Bob Ross. Off camera, he wasn't always the soft-spoken saint fans imagined. Friends described him as charming, flirtatious, even magnetic, and during his rise to fame, Bob's personal life grew complicated. Multiple relationships, rumors of affairs during painting tours. Even his own son would later say he had his own demons too. The public never saw that side, but those closest to him did, and some say that dynamic, especially with Annette Kowalski, blurred the lines between business and something more. Still, the machine kept running. Ross filmed episode after episode. He sold hope with every brushstroke. But by the early 1990s, tragedy struck. His wife Jane passed away from cancer, and not long after, Bob himself was diagnosed with lymphoma. He was dying, and the people he trusted most weren't backing off. By 1994, the cancer had spread. He was weak, in pain, and out of time. But the show had to go on, at least for the people around him. The Kowalskis saw what was coming, and they wanted to lock down everything before it was too late. They pressured Bob to sign over the rights to his names, likeness, and intellectual property. He refused, more than once, but it didn't matter. They didn't need his deathbed signature. They had older contracts, clauses tucked into earlier license agreements, buried in fine print. With his wife Jane already gone, and Bob too weak to fight, those documents became their weapon. They claimed full ownership of everything. His name, his image, his brand, even his signature. Bob Ross died on July 4th, 1995. He was only 52. He left behind his son, Steve A. Ross, a fellow painter, soft-spoken man like his father. But Steve inherited nothing. Bob Ross Inc. claimed it all, down to the last happy little tree. And since his death, the Bob Ross brand has become a multi-million-dollar empire. Paint sets, calendars, coffee mugs, Halloween costumes. His face is everywhere. But Steve, he got no royalties, no control, no seat at the table. The man who gave the world peace and calm left behind a storm. The public mourned the loss of a gentle teacher, but behind the scenes, the battle was just beginning. His son Steve Ross had painted beside him, appeared on the show, shared his voice, shared his style. Fans expected Steve to carry on the joy of painting, but the Kowalskis had other plans. They refused to let the show continue with Steve, unless he signed over full control of his name and likeness, the same legal trap his father fell into. Steve had seen what happened to his dad, and he refused. That was all the Kowalskis needed. Without their permission, there would be no new show, no licensed workshops, no official future. They didn't want a successor. They wanted a symbol they can control. And so Bob Ross, the man, became Bob Ross, the product. Today his face is plastered across pop culture. His voice is streamed on Netflix, looped on Twitch, and printed on mugs in big box stores. And all of it owned and monetized by Bob Ross Inc., now run by the Kowalski's daughter. And Bob's family caught out completely. In 2017, Steve sued, trying to reclaim his father's legacy. But in the eyes of the court, the paperwork was ironclad. He lost, and the empire his father built remains locked behind corporate glass. Bob Ross had spent 2 decades in the military. He knew how to give orders, how to raise his voice. But he chose instead to speak gently, to teach, to calm, to heal. In the end, he didn't want fame, he didn't want fortune, he wanted peace. And in his final days, he tried to make sure his son would carry that peace forward. But the people he trusted most ignored his wishes. They took his name, his image, his legacy, and they turned it into a product he never asked for.
All right. You know, while I'm doing that, one of the most interesting things that we see as we run across the country teaching this fantastic method is people continually say, I can't draw a straight line. I don't have the talent, Bob, to do what you're doing. That's baloney. Talent is a pursued interest. In other words, anything that you're willing to practice, you can do. And this is no exception.
So in the end, Bob Ross taught millions how to paint, but he never learned how to protect himself. He chose trust. He chose peace. And the people he trusted most turned him into a product. So the next time you see his smiling face on a mug, remember, the man who gave the world joy left behind a legacy of heartbreak. The question still remains, should Bob Ross have protected his legacy better, or is this what happens when the wrong people see a good man as a gold mine? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
Thank you for watching Forgotten History. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you have any comments or show ideas, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks again.